Hello everybody, John here, and welcome to another episode of Secrets of the XK8. Bit of a miserable day here in Lincolnshire. Just been for a ride out in the rain to get some fuel, and I thought I'd give you the first secret, which I shall subtitle The Fake Gauges of the XK8. So we have a full complement of instruments in the XK8. On the left, oil pressure, the clock in the middle, voltmeter. On the right, move over, and I've got the fuel gauge and I've got the temperature gauge, rev counter and speedo. Well, here's my shocking revelation. 3 of those gauges could be accused of being fake. And the 3 in question are the oil pressure gauge, the voltmeter, and the temperature gauge. So where does this shocker come from? Back in the 70s and 80s, Jaguar had a well-deserved reputation for bad reliability and warranty claims. The car of bulk volume for them at the time was the XJ6, and that was one of the last cars to have a full complement of mechanical, Smiths generally, instruments on its dashboard. And that was something that gave the perception of bad quality, bad reliability, bad issues to clients who were more used to the cars of the time that had telltale lights, i.e. an oil pressure light on the dashboard which would come on if the oil pressure was too low. In a Jaguar, the same client who was maybe not mechanically aware would see the oil pressure jump up to a okay position when he started the car, and then throughout the day would see it moving up and down with revs, would see it as the engine warmed up and maybe the oil got thin. At idle it would start to drop off. They would come up to traffic lights and the vacuum operated servo brakes would almost cause the cars to stall, bringing the revs down quite a lot, and they'd see the oil pressure drop right off. And various other things like that. This extra information gave the less well-informed the impression that their engine was about to blow up. If that same gauge had been replaced with a telltale indicator light, then it would probably never have come on, and a lot of the perceived issues would not have occurred. Don't get me wrong, there were lots of real issues. So, when Jaguar put the XK8 into production, which they wanted to be the ancestor of the E-Type or XKE, they wanted to provide it with a full set of instruments because it's part of the Jaguar thing. It's what is a Jag. It's instruments, it's wood, it's leather, it's power, it's multi-cylinder engines, it's their long bonnet, and it's the scoops and swoops. So they wanted the instruments, but they didn't want to repeat the issue of a perceived bad quality. So what they did is, this instrument we'll take as our example is the oil pressure gauge, and the oil pressure gauge is not real. It is not indicating the actual pressure. What it's doing is it's got a little stepper motor able to turn this dial to any position, and it takes a signal from the oil pressure sender and converts it through a little algorithm into, I'm going to place this needle at center because everything's fine. The car sees the oil pressure drop a little but goes, that's in normal parameters, I'm going to leave it at fine. If something gets blocked or the oil filter gets blocked, then it recognises a condition that's not good and pushes this needle right off to the right. If the pressure is low, genuinely, and it's outside of acceptable parameters, it will take it off the stop but put it in the red. And essentially this is just a 3-position warning system. The operation of these instruments is given a clue by the clock, which beautifully, I think, is adjusted with these buttons, and when you press, you can move the clock to any position you want. It's the same with this, the car can do it. So here we are. I've been out for a run in the car, but I guarantee this is going to do the same thing as when I started it cold this morning. I'm going to start the engine. I'm going to guess, but the oil pressure will be precisely middle. Let's have a little look at that. So it's now in its off the stop, red light on, bad condition, which is what it would do if the pressure was too low. And then I'll start the car and it winds to bang, stop. That is the good condition. And it has a 3rd position on the right, that is the too high position. If I look at my battery, isn't that impressive? 13 volts. That's a miracle in my opinion. And take the alternator up and down, not a twitch. That's because that's the good position. And it can display a high position on the right when things go wrong from a regulator point of view. It can display a low position on the left, again because the drive belt is slipping or the alternator is in a faulty condition. On this one, in fairness, it does provide, when the ignition is off, a true indication between 9 and 13. I'll show you that in a second. And on the right hand side, the steering wheel's a little in the way. I don't know if you can see, but it's amazing how the temperature is perfectly on the centre. You do see the temperature gauge creep up from the bottom. That's just an algorithm that enables it to sweep up nicely over a period. But as long as it's reaching temperature, it's going to go to that point. Small increases in temperature won't increase that until it gets very hot, and then it jumps up in a couple of steps. Okay, so I did say that the voltmeter had another function, so I'm just going to turn the engine back off. So there we are, back to 0. And if I turn the ignition on, you can see that that is now off centre, and that is a true indication. So that's showing you where your battery is. So it does have a lot of good functions. There are some kits on the market, little electronic kits, that I think an enthusiast developed for himself and is now selling. I think it's called True Dial or True Gauge. I'll see if I can find a link and put it below. Not something I've tried, but that converts these instruments back to true reading. So that is secret number 1. Next secret is connected with the gear selector. Now, the gear selector, in common with a lot of good automatic systems, locks itself into position with the keys out. And what we find is if you try and move it with the keys out, the ignition, lock off, etc., it's not happening. It's not going to work. Which is all fine and dandy and stops kids knocking it out of park. There are occasions when you're servicing things, when you're repairing things, that you want to disable this feature. One of them is you put a nice surround on here like this, when you want to move this to different positions to get out of the way. Another one is if you're working on the hi-fi and you need to draw this out. the gear sticks in the wrong place. The easiest way to deal with this is there is an override for the transmission lockout. I've got a Torx style bit here that fits the little bung that is to the left of the J-gate, and just pop that in there. Could find the alt, there he is. Spin him out. It's only plastic, so it's generally not very tight. There we go, just pop that back. And that reveals a little hole. And into that hole you can introduce all manner of good things, i.e. a screwdriver will do this job very adequately. But your key is exactly the right length. Drop it into the hole. You'll find that it stops just before the button. I'll get the angle better for you guys to see. Just before the handle gets to the plastic, I mean just before. And then as long as you press that down, you can move it out of its lock position and the beeping will stop. There you go. So the key is the key.